Every art form has its entries that are considered masterpieces, the creations that define the medium and push it forward. Film has King Kong, Citizen Kane, The Godfather. Books have The Odyssey, 1984, Moby Dick. By now, it's almost irrelevant what an individual's thoughts are on these works of art because, well, their importance to their medium and to human society as a whole far exceeds that which anyone could have ever expected. Video games have their own entries like this. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important video games ever made. One that is considered a masterpiece by many, and one that is considered an overrated product of its time by others. Nonetheless, we'll be looking at Super Metroid, the game that laid the foundation for the Metroidvania genre, the game that kickstarted speedrunning into popularity, and the game that was an inspiration for far more other titles than we will ever be aware of. Hello and welcome. I am Zabraxi. Every so often, there's a game that will come along that I have to talk about that will genuinely give me anxiety to discuss, and it's not because of any worry or fear of the divisiveness of my opinion or the backlash from the fans about something I might say. No, it's none of that. What actually gets to me is that the impact that this game might have on the medium as a whole of video games is just so much larger than me, so much larger than I could ever give it credit for, and that's kind of intimidating. However, there does exist something kind of neat about Super Metroid, and that's the fact that the conversation has already happened. Everything that could possibly be said about the game has probably been said. So all I can give you personally is exactly that, my personal viewpoint, my personal perspective on the game, what it means to the industry, and what it means to me. And that's kind of fun, and hopefully it'll be interesting to you. If it is, great, I'm happy you enjoyed it, and if it's not interesting at all, well, I mean, at least the video is free, right? Welcome to Metroid 3. When I mentioned earlier that this was one of the most important games of all time, I mean it. Donald Mustard, creator of Infinity Blade and the absolutely incredible Shadow Complex, stated that, quote, "It's hard for me to name my top 10 favorite games, but I never struggle with the greatest game of all time. Super Metroid," end quote. The impact that Super has had on the industry is impressive. While Super Mario Bros. Is crowned as the savior of the industry from the video game crash of the 80s, while The Legend of Zelda is heralded as proof that gaming is something more than just jumping around obstacles, Super Metroid is often considered to be the largest inspiration for some of the most impressive games the medium has ever seen. David D'Angelo of Yacht Club Games, the creator of Shovel Knight, has referenced the atmosphere and feelings of isolation as inspiration for his own creations. This environmental storytelling would be a staple of the Metroid franchise and all games inspired by it. To bring Shadow Complex back a bit, the title is often pointed to as the revitalization of the Metroidvania genre in the modern market. Creator Donald Mustard mentioned when this was questioned about his inspiration from Super Metroid, quote, "My evil secret intent in making Shadow Complex was demonstrating that this type of game was commercially viable, so there'd be more of them. Look at all the non-linear exploration titles nowadays. There's Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet, Guacamelee, Axiom Verge, Ori and the Blind Forest. They're all awesome, and I get to play them all," end quote. If Super Metroid was released today, I'm sure someone on the internet would call it that Zelda meets Dark Souls game. It's pretty established that Dark Souls is actually the first and only game ever made. Despite that, when Demon Souls and Dark Souls released, critics and players alike constantly referred to Super Metroid and Metroid Prime as examples of the environmental storytelling inspiration. This isn't a coincidence either, as director Hidetaka Miyazaki often referred to the SNES-era Nintendo titles as inspiration for his work. This rabbit hole just doesn't end, by the way. It just goes and goes, and I've only scratched the surface here. I had a list of about 20 or so more interviews of people using Super Metroid as an inspiration for their game, and it doesn't even stop at the direct connections either. Retro Studios specifically claimed Super Metroid as their leading guiding force when making Metroid Prime. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order creators mentioned that the Metroid series level design was an inspiration, specifically Metroid Prime's map layout and the reward structures, and they used that as a roadmap for their game. game. So you could kind of argue, in essence, Super Metroid laid the groundwork for games even like Jedi Fallen Order. Seriously, Star Wars? You too? I mean, every art form has inspirations, right? Like every art form has some new idea that stemmed from some other idea or some creation within that medium, but with video games at least, it's kind of funny. It's like everything's this web of inspiration that some way, somehow hits Super Metroid. It's really weird. Except Dark Souls, that was actually the first game ever made.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
The slow intro, the low beat ambient music, the cry from the baby Metroid from the last game. This pre-title sequence sells the experience from the very start. There's already a feeling of isolation and abandonment as you see the dead scientists on the title screen with the Metroid in its capsule. This recap you get of Metroid 1 and 2 sets the stage of what's to come as the music in the background feels both heroic and menacing. The theme of Super Metroid is so clearly inspired by the Alien movies, and in this case, it encapsulates that same emotion that you would get knowing that you are about to embark on a grand adventure on an alien planet with severe danger. The scientists have been studying the baby Metroid and have found energy potential that could benefit all of civilization, or be used as a weapon. The game hasn't even actually started yet, but I do have one complaint. I already need to get this out of the way with Super. If I'm being honest, this recap is great, but only if you've actually played the previous games. If you haven't, this just feels like a very quick info dump rather than a proper way of getting the player up to speed. I played Super Metroid first in the series, and this intro meant absolutely nothing to me. As a new player, it's mostly just a waste of time, but as a returning player, you see the events post-Metroid 2 as Samus hands over the baby. This provides some pretty unique and important context. Almost as soon as Samus leaves, there's a distress call back to the station. Oh, that was fast. Look, if a high-tech space station can crumble in the time that it takes me to make a pizza, then something's wrong. We really have to analyze this intro though. This is one of the best intro sequences in all of gaming, and playing it again for this video made me appreciate it all the more. When you start in this station, you have to go down, and there's some slate platforming here. There's no enemies, no threats. You get this chance to get a feeling for the controls and the physics of the game. Samus feels way snappier than the original 2 Metroid games, but her jumps and the gravity of the game is a little floaty, which we'll get back to later. Something else to note here is that there's also no music all of a sudden. This does two things. It allows the developers to set the atmosphere. This place feels lifeless, and the lack of any music ensures that that's also what the player feels. Secondly though, this silence also lets the players hear the sound effects of Samus and the results of controlling her. Knowing the sound that she makes when she lands on something or the movement, these will be a key in performing more complicated tricks like wall jumping later down the line. Eventually, we stumble upon the room of the title screen, though it's a bit different. The baby Metroid is now gone, escaped from captivity. Wait, hold on, what did that guy say earlier on?
The last Metroid is in captivity.
Yeah, but is it though? We finally found the baby, but we can't grab it for some reason. And then the glow of the eyes, and finally, the full appearance of Ridley himself. This game opens with a boss fight amongst one of the final bosses of the original game, and man, you get destroyed by him. As he takes off, an escape sequence is triggered, and you now must execute the movement that you learned prior. This time, there's an element of tension though, allowing the player to make some mistakes. The shaft that you're escaping out of is moving all over the place, and it really sells just how intense this moment really is. All of this sets up just how weak the player is compared to the larger threat at hand. This escape, the space station exploding, the landing on Zebes, so much of this sells the journey ahead so well and ensures that this becomes one of the most iconic intros in all of gaming. There are countless video essays and game design pieces on this introduction, and honestly, I could go further, but this game seriously deserves all of that praise. When Retro Studios made Metroid Prime, which is quite possibly right behind Super as the most beloved Metroid title, they directly copied some of the elements from Super Metroid because of how well they worked. This introduction, right here, would be done again, beat for beat, almost exactly identically in Metroid Prime. You land on a space station, learn the controls, discover some things aren't as they seem, and the threat is set. You bump into Ridley, you have a boss fight that triggers an escape sequence, and land on an alien planet. Up. It was raining on Talon 4 though in Metroid Prime. That makes it original. That's just a coincidence. Returning to Zebes, Super Metroid now takes its time teaching the player some new mechanics. While the space station was to get you used to the controls, the familiarity of Zebes lets you figure out the staging of Super Metroid's level design. Right off the bat, you can't go right, so you go left. The first door you can't get through, and the red door you can't open yet. However, you can open the next blue door, but you can't really go further. Already, we're being taught that there are going to be places that 1, we can't enter, 2, there are going to be rooms we need an upgrade for, and 3, other places you might be able to go into somewhat, but you won't be able to fully explore it right off the bat. We explore down a little further, and we're actually finally at the, end of the original Metroid game? This is where the original encounter with Mother Brain took place, and yet this actually surprisingly doesn't feel like fan service like I was originally planning to expect to feel. Instead, this feels like both a passage of time to let the players of the franchise know that it's been quite a while since the events of the original Metroid game. Secondly, this technology that you see in these rooms really contrasts with the rest of Zebes, letting the player know that there's potentially life down here, even though we don't see it yet. Taking the elevator deeper, like in the original game, and standing in that original spot, well, we go left and we grab the morph ball, since that's the only thing that we can really do. Wait, hold on, what is this camera? Or is it a security drone? Something's not right. Just as I felt before, there is definitely life down here, but where? This feeling of being watched would be duplicated again in Metroid Zero Mission, when Mother Brain is surveying Samus's moves. Eventually, you'll find the missiles and return back to where you came from, since there seems to be a dead end everywhere else. All throughout this exploration, you can see things just moving off screen, and it doubles the impact that something or someone is still here. When you return back to Mother Brain's room and then the space pirates just appear out of nowhere, it's both surprising and expected due to all of the subtext that's been building around you recently. Now you get a chance to engage further with the combat, as enemies can really hurt you and are coming at you from some really weird angles. Also, this long shaft room tested your platforming under pressure originally, but this new silo tests your platforming alongside combat, allowing the player to get an even tighter grasp of the controls. There is so much going on in this intro, and while the map feels open and available, it's actually crafted to keep you on the right path until you can finally explore further into Brinstar. One of the best parts of this introduction is how it feels like you should be able to get lost, but you actually can't. It's genuinely very linear, even though it doesn't feel that way. Everything is hidden in plain sight, and you'll feel really clever working around this world as the game sets up tropes and other indicators that you'll push through, and these will be used repeatedly throughout the game to uncover secrets and to further your progression. This first half hour teaches you, quite literally everything you need to ever know without ever needing to tell the player actually anything. It's all done through level design and gameplay. It's the epitome of textless tutorial, and one that is often referenced by gamers and designers alike as a shining example of the potential of video games. You see, I praised the opening moments of Zero Mission a lot in my retrospective on it, and honestly, it deserves every last bit of that praise. But Super Metroid did what Zero Mission did and more. And it's a bit weird for me, honestly, to kind of delve so much time into the opening moments of these games, but that moment, those opening bits, can be some of the most critical and most important of any title. Super Metroid, in 1994, created one of the most important and best introductions in all of gaming. And while 10 years later, Zero Mission would get really close, I think Super just excels a bit further. This intro isn't the only part where Super Metroid excels at teaching the player over other games in the series. Zero Mission, AM2R, and Fusion all have the speed booster in their respective games. It's a really cool ability, and I'm glad it's in them all. All of these games use super clever use of the Shine Spark ability that comes hidden with the speed booster upgrade. However, none of those 3 games ever once show you how to actually use the Shine Spark. They kind of just hope that you figure out it exists and hope that you'll stumble upon its significance. If you do, great. That's awesome. However, Super Metroid is the only game that outright teaches you that the Shine Spark exists and how to use it. In the other 3 games, it's a fun secret that you uncover, allowing you to show off your mastery of the game, which is cool and it's fine and all. However, what I would argue is clearly better design would be to show you that a mechanic exists and then allow the player's own skill to dictate the creative uses of that mechanic. When you find this little animal, you can run with him and it will trigger your speed booster. You will then notice that he crouches, starts blinking, and then propels upward. Seeing this happen immediately makes you want to try it, and what do you know? The game just taught you the shine spark without any text. Other animals will also teach you the wall jump as well, which, while it has some tight timing, with a couple attempts, you'll be able to pull it off really reliably. Just tap the direction you want to wall jump and then press the jump button immediately after. This is just but another brilliant example of the game design that Super Metroid pulls off that inspires designers to this very day. Chris Johnston of Adult Swim Games mentioned this about Super Metroid. Quote, "It teaches you new concepts through experience. You observe these cute little creatures doing a move called a wall jump, and then you know how to do it yourself without the game ever bringing up a dialogue box explicitly telling you how." End quote. It's creative and intuitive, while also showing off the interactive potential of the video game medium. When I was starting Super Metroid for this video, I went in with the plan, the expectation to be as critical as possible, because I don't really have that much nostalgia for it. I remember playing it before, and I remember liking it, but I don't really have that deep of a connection to the game at all. What I found this time around is definitely that there are some problems with Super Metroid that really need to get talked about. In games with this level of exploration, backtracking is kind of a necessary evil. However, Metroid is commonly referred to as the series that tends to get backtracking right. I praised Zero Mission quite a bit for nailing backtracking so well, but it too suffered from one particular moment that felt really bad. Well, Super Metroid kind of falls into a different trap, but one that is still rather frustrating. After you receive the power bombs, you need to go back to Norfair and hopefully, oh dear God, hopefully you remember to stumble upon the fact that these blocks right here need to be bombed. If you don't remember this particular spot, you could be stuck for quite a while exploring around aimlessly to try and find out where the heck you're supposed to go. There's another moment in the game that's pretty infamous where there's this wall that's completely fake. Even using the X-ray scope, which allows you to see hidden paths, won't reveal the way through this wall. However, the setup of this path actually makes this wall look super suspicious to where you kind of want to go and try and morph ball bomb it anyway. If you try to doing that, then you'll notice that you fall right through the wall and you find that there's a secret path on the other side. While, yes, it's not perfectly conveyed, honestly, this particular part is grossly overblown. Arguably, this fake wall is far less egregious than the fake lava in Zero Mission, since that fake lava would actually lead to your death if real. Therefore, you wouldn't even want to try going through that floor anyway because you might die. The wall in Super at least looks like it's just worth checking for secrets, and there aren't other factors that are actively pushing you away from experimenting there like the lava. However, this trek back to Norfair with the power bomb blocks is pretty bad and kinda dumb. The problem itself could have been easily remedied by one change to the game. I would actually argue that the largest problem with Super Metroid is tied to this one element of the game, and the situations like this Norfair backtracking is immediately remedied by one small tweak. Change the map to show doors and pathways. That's it. This one change could quite literally be the reason why some people find Zero Mission easy to navigate, while Super Metroid feeling esoteric. Granted, that map change didn't do anything for the fake lava problem, since it's still not even marked on the map. But seriously, am I the only one who hates that fake lava problem so much? It's so BS, right? Like, I'm not alone? Overall, I think Zero Mission made a mistake by telling players where to go next. However, its map design helped make sure that you could both mentally remember roadblocks or obstacles along your path to return to later, while also having a map indicator of doors and pathways that you haven't been able to cross through yet. This, in Super, would allow Super Metroid to ensure that the player feels just as clever when moving through the tunnels of Zebes, while also ensuring that people aren't just running around for an hour and a half trying to find out what room actually had what because they just couldn't couldn't remember or they didn't notice a small indicator. I really appreciate Super Metroid's level design, making the player constantly feel so intelligent by overcoming secrets that are cunningly hidden throughout. The map change wouldn't undo that though. It would just make sure that players aren't completely lost if they put the game down at a bad point or returned to it a couple days later. When I hear and read about how some people think Super Metroid is super confusing, a point that I think is really overblown, it seems though that the map is really the crux of that complaint, especially considering those arguments are always made using the Metroid Fusion or Zero Mission as references of how players didn't get lost in those games. But those two titles also had the upgraded map layout. I mean, to be fair, it's also completely impossible to get lost in Metroid Fusion. The game is so linear, and quite literally the only way that you cannot find your way is to be blindfolded. Am I winning? I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's return to Super Metroid and another glaring moment that really surprised me. For all the incredible game design behind Super Metroid, there's this one point in the game that genuinely felt so amateur. Near the end of the game, you'll explore Meridia, this deep ocean environment. Well, there's a shortcut from Meridia back to Brinstar, which is really cool. Shortcuts are all over this game, and finding them adds options for the player to explore more effectively. I found this shortcut, and what's really cool is that the pathway was hidden right in front of me in a spot that I've walked past several times. Really clever design here. Well, since I found it, and there's a save point right here, I figured I might as well save and then return back, but hold on, wait. Why is the path blocked now? Why can't I get back through? Did the game just seriously lock me out because I saved? Is this a one-way shortcut? Really? So now that I explored this shortcut, I have to trek all the way back through Brinstar just to get back to Meridia, explore all the way through Meridia just to get back to where I was, and then remember to not take the shortcut. Why in the world would you punish the player like this? Why would a designer instill negative reinforcement of exploration in a game quite literally all about exploration? This isn't just counterintuitive, it's mind-blowingly silly. Also, for something that's supposed to be a shortcut, this added a very long amount of time to my trek through this whole damn area. I'm really not sure how such an obvious mistake was made here. While I'm at it and complaining about Super Metroid, let's add the bosses onto that list. While some of them are fine, such as Kraid and Dragon, overall, the encounters are yet again a real letdown. This is such an unfortunate trend of the Metroid series by this point. Zero Mission really didn't have a single good standout boss fight. Metroid 2 had none, and AM2R had a couple, but it was all the original bosses and not found in Metroid 2, except the Queen Metroid, which was genuinely a great final boss. Super Metroid though, yet again, woof, big whiff, except the final boss. The Crocomire encounter is iconic for sure, since his brutal death and fake-out return attempt are very memorable, but the actual fight isn't anything special. Moving around the room against Kraid feels pretty good, and the Phantoon encounter is a nice challenge, but honestly, the most interesting boss fight has to be Dragon, except the final boss. Dragon's fight starts with some turrets, and you have to destroy them as these pesky creatures try to swarm you. Eventually, those bugs leave, and Dragon shows up, and you have two options here. Do this fight legit, which is a really fun challenge, or you exploit this fight in such a creative way. When Dragon picks you up, you can use the grapple beam on one of the broken turrets to hurt both you and her, but if you survive the damage, she will die, and the fight ends. Yeah, I got her! As you claim victory over this encounter, the small babies come back and carry off the body of their mother. Well, I don't feel good about that anymore. This moment snapped me back into remembering that this was a real place, a living planet with its own ecology. These creatures don't know me. They are just trying to survive, and to them, I am the alien life form coming in and wreaking havoc. In my attempt to find the baby Metroid, I am running the risk of wiping out entire ecosystems, which I guess I already did in Metroid 2, but details. The Ridley fight is also another major letdown. We once again have a fight where the entire strategy is to just spam the rocket button. Fighting Ridley here is substantially harder than his Zero Mission encounter, and it's definitely more engaging due to his better movement. The encounter though, it's still not good by any means. It's funny, I really like Ridley, but I've noticed that as time goes on, I think I like him more for his design, his place in the lore of Metroid, and that noise he makes whenever you fight him. Those are the memorable elements because these fights just kind of suck in the 2D games. After the Ridley fight, we locate the container of the baby Metroid, only it's empty. After all of this, all this effort, it feels like our adventure was for naught. Exploring back to the earlier areas of the game, and after killing the 4 Guardian bosses, we can explore further though, back to Tarian from the original Metroid. Do we really have to? This final descent into Tarian is brilliant. You see, at this point in the series, the developers have to acknowledge that there's a chance that the players know where this is, and they know what this place means. They have to consider also that this might be someone's first expedition ever through a Metroid game. So those players' expectations are going to be a bit different. So how do you appeal to existing players and old players simultaneously here? The answer? Make the Metroids not that scary. What? How does making the Metroids easy do anything here? Is this a trick? Zero Mission plays with the idea of Metroids swarming you like crazy when Samus is in Tarian. The Metroid series in general would also go with this approach even in titles like Metroid Prime. However, Super Metroid goes for a different tactic. Instead of quantity, Super goes for one big trick. There typically aren't many Metroids about, and dispatching of them is relatively easy. As a veteran player, this makes you feel a bit cocky. Why are these things so easy? As a newcomer to the series, you're going to be asking that exact same question, but perhaps from a point of letdown. Why are these Metroids so easy? This exists so that Super can throw these last couple enemies at you that are genuinely really tough. One of them even seems invincible into holy crap! Not getting involved in that. Introducing the title of the game, the Super Metroid. This thing sucks the life of a creature that you couldn't beat while seeking Samus next. Instead of a swarm of them making you feel powerless, it's just one, a single Metroid that seems so much more powerful than anything that we've seen before, that latches onto Samus and starts to kill her. It sucks the life until it leaves you at 1 HP. But why? As the Metroid starts to make noises, you can remember that this is the baby. The same Metroid that was rescued on SR-388. You can see the creature surprised, confused, shaken by the fact that it almost just killed Samus, and it just kind of leaves. It's really impressive how Super Metroid can convey this range of emotions and interactions without a single bit of text or dialogue. And this ending has only just begun. As we move through, we uncover that Mother Brain is back again. This fight against her is, again, surprisingly easy, but maybe it's just because of how good we've gotten at the game. This is only to play with your expectations, as when you defeat Mother Brain, you realize it's only still just begun. That damage that Mother Brain dishes out in her new form is so high, but her hitbox is rather large as well. It feels more like a standoff rather than a typical boss fight that you'd find in the Metroid games. There isn't some clever platforming or timing necessary in this encounter. All in all, this fight isn't actually that spectacular, and by this point would still be a bit of a letdown despite this special phase until... Wait, I'm stuck. Why can't I move? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Wow. After all of that, it would seem the tides have turned and the baby saved itself and me from captivity. Excuse, oh boy. By this point, Super Metroid has to yet again assume that this might be a veteran player or a new series amateur about to embark on this final encounter. The cleverness in the way that developers handle the baby Metroid dying and giving its life ensures that no matter who you are, no matter what Metroid games you've played or haven't, this moment is nonetheless impactful. If you played Metroid 2, then you were there. You discovered this infant creature and you walked it back to your ship to hand it over. This baby was your responsibility. If Super Metroid is your first game, then this creature, one that is supposedly deadly and a threat, just gave its life in order to save yours. That sacrifice slams into the heart of the player no matter what their perspective is. This is genius. We all know and understand the depth of life, really. We know what it means when something sacrifices its own life to protect our lives or something else's. So we get that impact when we watch Mother Brain kill this creature that is trying to protect and save our lives. And it's really hard when that happens to not want a little bit of vengeance. Oh, and vengeance is what we get. As the power from the baby Metroid courses through Samus, the fight that was once one-sided stays that way. But now, Samus holds the power. This isn't a tough fight. It's the easiest fight in the entire game, but this moment, these emotions, the raw power as you slam into Mother Brain is satisfying to a level that I don't think I can describe. Watching her reel back in pain and agony, watching her animations display fear, this life form that was once a threat to the galaxy is now nothing but a scared animal cowering in the corner as you use its own victim's energy against it. Having the battle end once again with a final escape sequence keeps the emotional moment on a high as your heart is still racing, as your palms are still sweating. The power of the Metroid stays with you all the way through the sequence as you absolutely devastate every single enemy and obstacle in your path. The pressure of the clock, the emotional rush of the boss encounter, the lingering sadness and anger of the baby Metroid sacrifice, the labyrinthian level design, all of this kicks up your anxiety and ensures that this might just be the best escape sequence in all of gaming. This is the end of Super Metroid. There's still a lot more to say. I noticed so many details around the world that taught the player how to interact with the game, or show moments of power growth, or expressed more of the world via its environment. This script isn't actually what I was expecting to write. I genuinely came, as I mentioned at the start of this video, into this playthrough to be more critical and to kind of humble Super Metroid in spite of its massive praise that it's normally showered in. While there are definitely some problems like I mentioned, and more that I haven't, like the movement being a little bit floaty, it's even in those details that shock me. The movement is floaty, yes, and the game is designed around that momentum. So while I prefer the feeling of Zero Mission, the floaty gameplay is by no means bad design. The option to have slower movement while also having the ability to run on command with the new run button, that extra control just made Super Metroid feel better than I was ever anticipating. Even having control of how to trigger the speed booster is something that the series just doesn't have elsewhere. I knew that I would like the game, and in the end, despite some of the weirdness, I love it. I knew Super Metroid was a good game all in all, but I actually left Super loving it more than I ever thought I could have. It's truly wonderful. It's not perfect by any means, and arguably Zero Mission gives it a very decent run for its money in some areas. But as a whole, Super Metroid is a masterpiece. Its legendary status amongst gamers, speedrunners, and game designers, it's so well earned. It's not every day that I can turn off a game and feel the weight of it all hit me. It happens so rarely to me now, but I know that feeling when it hits. And when those credits rolled, I felt that wave just wash over me. Super Metroid is one of the most important games ever made. And if it wasn't before, it's now one of my all-time favorites.